Nginx provides us two log types, error logs and access logs. Error logs, as the name suggests, for anything that failed or didn't happen as expected, and access logs to log all requests to the server. Logging is an extremely important aspect of not only Nginx but web servers in general, as logs allow us to track down errors or even identify malicious users. Logging is also enabled by default, so for that reason most of the time leaving the log configuration as is will be fine. But understanding how to change them is definitely important, and disabling logs for certain conditions or creating resource-specific logs can both help lower resource usage and improve the log file structure. In our case, we set the path to the log files when we configured Nginx in the installation section of the course, which was /var/log/nginx. And if we list the contents of that directory, we see those two log files, error.log and access.log, with both files already containing several entries from throughout this course, as we can see from the file sizes. I'll change into that logs directory and clear both of these log files so we can start from scratch. Just echo an empty string to access.log, and same for error.log. Done. Then, to see a default access log entry, head over to the browser and request /thumb.png. That loads, so check the access log, and there we have it, for thumb.png. Now, a very common misconception is that 404s get logged in the error log, which most of the time is not the case. First, let's reset this configuration back to serving the demo site without any rewrites. Save that, reload, and again in the browser I'll request a URL that does not exist, say /missing, which gives us that standard Nginx 404. Check the access log, and there we have it, that request with a status of 404. Now, I say not always, as a properly handled 404 won't produce an error log entry, but in our case, log that out, Nginx could not match a file to the request URI and resulted in an error. Just something to keep in mind. A 404 is a perfectly valid response and by no means an error in itself. To create a typical entry in the error log then, we'll have to cause Nginx to actually malfunction. For example, I'll add a second argument to the root directive, which only expects a single argument. Save this, attempt to reload the configuration, which has of course silently failed, but in the error log, we have that error entry, invalid number of arguments in root directive, with a reference to the line in the configuration file. We can also create custom log files or disable logging altogether for a given context by means of the access_log or error_log directives. For example, let's say we want to add an access log for all requests to /secure. I'll create a location context for that URI, returning a simple string, welcome to secure area, and in here enable an access log by saying access_log with a path to that log file, var log/nginx secure.access.log, keeping it in that nginx log directory. Save, reload the configuration, and immediately if we list the contents of var log nginx, that file has already been created, ready to log requests. Navigate to /secure, we get the message, so check the access log, and there it is, whilst no longer existing in the global access log. It is possible to log this to both, however, by simply adding another access log with the global path, in which case we'll get that log entry in both. Log directives being one of the few directives you can use multiple times like this, but we'll cover directive types in more detail in the next lesson. Another common use of the log directive is to disable logging for certain requests, and in doing so reducing server load and keeping log files smaller, particularly useful for sites receiving very high traffic. To disable logging for a given context then, it's as simple as saying access_log off. Generally, I'd say disable the majority of access logs and leave error logging in place, but this will depend on individual server requirements. For more advanced logging configurations, we can also specify the access log format, enable gzipping of the log file, or set the log level for error logs. But again, that's typically for larger, more advanced configurations. I've linked to a very good nginx.com article in the lesson resources should you be interested in these advanced options. In the next lesson, we'll take a look at those different directive types and the basics of inheritance.